He was one of the most celebrated personalities in the history of the world. He revolutionized military organization and training. He sponsored the Napoleonic Code, the prototype of later civil law codes. He also reorganized education system itself. Napoleon's many reforms left a lasting mark on the institutions of France and of much of the Western Europe. But his driving passion was the military expansion of French dominion. And though at his fall he left France a little larger than it had been at the outbreak of the revolution in 1789, he was born on the island of Corsica. Napoleon rapidly rose through the ranks of the military during the French Revolution. After seizing political power in France in 1799, he crowned himself emperor in 1804. He was shrewd, ambitious, and a skilled military strategist. Napoleon successfully waged war against various parts of European nations and expanded his empire. However, after a disastrous French invasion of Russia in 1812, Napoleon abdicated the throne 2 years later and was exiled to the island of Elba. In 1815, he briefly returned to the power in 100 Days Campaign. After crushing the defeat at the Battle of Waterloo, he abdicated once again and was exiled to the remote island of Saint Helena, where he died at the age of 51. Napoleon Bonaparte was born on August 15, 1769 in Ajaccio on the Mediterranean island of Corsica. He was the second of 8 surviving children born to Carlo Bonaparte and a lawyer and Letitia Romano Bonaparte. Although his parents were members of the minor Corsican nobility, the family was not at all wealthy. The year before Napoleon's birth, France acquired Corsica from the city-state of Genoa, Italy. As a boy, Napoleon attended school in mainland France, where he learned the French language and went to graduate from a French military academy in 1785. He then became a second lieutenant in an artillery regiment of the French army. The French Revolution began in 1789, and within 3 years of revolutionaries had overthrown the monarchy and proclaimed a French republic. During the early years of the revolution, Napoleon was largely on leave from the military and home in Corsica, where he became affiliated with the Jacobins, a pre-democracy political group. In 1793, Bonaparte family fled their native island for mainland France, where Napoleon returned to military duty. In France, Napoleon became associated with Augustin Robespierre, the brother of revolutionary leader Maximilien Robespierre. During this time, Napoleon was promoted to the rank of brigadier general in the army. However, after Robespierre fell from power along with his brother, Napoleon was briefly put under house arrest for his ties to his brothers. In 1795, Napoleon helped suppress a royalist insurrection against the revolutionary government in Paris and was promoted to the major general. Since 1792, France's revolutionary government had been engaged in military conflicts with various European nations. In 1796, Napoleon commanded a French army that defeated the large armies of Austria, one of his country's primary rivals, in a series of battles in Italy. In 1797, France and Austria signed the Treaty of Campo Formio, resulting in territorial gains for the French. The following year, the Directory, the 5-person group that had governed France since 1795, offered to let Napoleon lead an invasion of England. Napoleon determined that France's naval forces were not yet ready to go up against the superior British Royal Navy. Instead, he proposed an invasion of Egypt in an effort to wipe out British trade routes with India. Napoleon's troops scored a victory against Egypt's military rulers, the Mamluks, at the Battle of the Pyramids in 1798. Soon, however, his forces were stranded after his naval fleet was nearly decimated by the British at the Battle of the Nile in August 1978. In early 1799, Napoleon's army launched an invasion of Ottoman Empire ruled Syria, which ended with a failed siege of Acre, located in modern-day Israel. That summer, with the political situation in France marked by uncertainty, the ever ambitious and cunning Napoleon opted to abandon his army in Egypt and returned to France. In November 1799, in an event known as the Coup of 18 Brumaire, Napoleon was a part of group that successfully overthrew the French Directory. The Directory was replaced with a three-member consulate. Napoleon became first consul, becoming the lead political figure. In June 1800, at the Battle of Marengo, Napoleon's forces defeated one of France's perennial enemies, the Austrians, and drove them out of Italy. The victory helped cement Napoleon's power as first consul. Napoleon worked to restore stability to post-revolutionary France. He centralized the government, instituted reforms in such areas as banking and education, supported science and the arts, and sought to improve relations between the regime and the Pope. One of his significant accomplishments was the Napoleonic Code, which streamlined the French legal system and continues to form the foundation of French civil law to this day. In 1802, a constitutional amendment made Napoleon first consul for life. 2 years later, in 1804, he crowned himself as the Emperor of France in a lavish ceremony at the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. From 1803 to 1815, France was engaged in the Napoleonic Wars, a series of major conflicts with the various coalitions of European nations. In 1803, partially as a means to raise funds for future wars, Napoleon sold France's Louisiana territory in North America to newly independent United States for $15 million, a transaction that later became known as the Louisiana Purchase. In October 1805, the British wiped out Napoleon's fleet at the Battle of Trafalgar. However, in December of the same year, Napoleon achieved what it is considered to be one of his greatest victories at the Battle of Austerlitz, in which his army defeated the Austrians and Russians. The victory resulted in the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire and the creation of the Confederation of the Rhine. Beginning in 1806, Napoleon sought to wage large-scale economic warfare against Britain with the establishment of the so-called continental system of European port blockades against British trades. In 1810, Russia withdrew from the continental system. In retaliation, Napoleon led a massive army into Russia in the summer of 1812. Rather than engaging the French in a full-scale battle, the Russians adopted a strategy of retreating wherever Napoleon forces attempt to attack. As a result, Napoleon's troops trekked deeper into Russia despite being ill-prepared for an extended campaign. In September, both sides suffered heavy casualties in the indecisive Battle of Borodino. Napoleon forces marched onto Moscow only to discover almost the entire population was evacuated. Retreating Russians set fires across the city in an effort to deprive enemy troops out of supplies. After waiting a month for a surrender that never came, Napoleon, faced with the onset of the Russian winter, was forced to order his starving, exhausted army out of Moscow. During the disastrous retreat, his army suffered continual harassment from a suddenly aggressive and merciless Russian army. Of Napoleon's 600,000 troops who began the campaign, only an estimated 100,000 made it out of Russia. At the same time as the catastrophic Russian invasion, French forces were engaged in the Peninsular War, which resulted in the Spanish and Portuguese with the assistance from the British, driving the French from the Iberian Peninsula. The loss was followed in 1813 by the Battle of Leyte, also known as the Battle of Nations, in which Napoleon's forces were defeated by a coalition that included Austrian, Prussian, Russian, and Swedish troops. Napoleon then retreated to France, and in March 1814, coalition forces captured Paris. On April 6, 1814, Napoleon, then in his mid-40s, was forced to abdicate the throne. He was exiled to Elba, a Mediterranean island off coast of Italy. He was given sovereignty over the small island. On February 26, 1815, after less than a year in exile, Napoleon escaped Elba and sailed to the French mainland with a group of more than 1,000 supporters. On March 20, he returned to Paris where he was welcomed by cheering crowds. The new king Louis XVIII and Napoleon began what came to be known as the 100 Days Campaign. Upon Napoleon's return to France, a coalition of allies, the Austrian, British, Prussians and Russians, who considered the French emperor an enemy, began to prepare for war. Napoleon raised a new army and planned to strike preemptively, defeating the elite forces one by one before they could launch a united attack against him. In June 1815, his forces invaded Belgium, where British and Prussian troops were stationed. On June 16th, Napoleon's troops defeated the Prussians at the Battle of Ligny. However, 2 days later, on June 18th, at the Battle of Waterloo near Brussels, the French were crushed by the British with the assistance from the Prussians. On June 22nd, 1815, Napoleon was once again forced to abdicate. In October 1815, Napoleon was exiled to the remote British-held island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean. He died there on May 5, 1821, at the age of 51, most likely from a stomach cancer. Napoleon was buried on the island despite his request to be laid to rest on the banks of the Seine among the French people I have loved so much. That was his words written. Okay, here are some of the famous Napoleon quotes just for you to get inspired or maybe to manipulate. One is that the only way to lead people is to show them a future. A leader is a dealer in hope. Second, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. The third, the reason most people fail instead of succeed is that they trade what they want most for what they want at the moment. Now, if you wish to be a success in this beautiful world, promise everything and deliver nothing.